one infinite creator enlivened by a mysterious vitality that comes to us. This energy exists within and behind everything. For most, this energy is misunderstood and is used up in the friction of life. Friction in the form of mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual pain. This friction causes this mysterious energy to stop its movement and get stuck, resulting in distorted perceptions. The great work of the alchemist is the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, a mysterious object said to be able to transmute base metals into gold, among many other wonders. The true goal of the great work, however, and the goal of the alchemist, is to transform one's own being into the Philosopher's Stone, to make oneself capable of transmuting this mysterious energy coming through us into a higher, more refined energy capable of illumination. In John Dee's working with the angels, the angel Uriel is said to have explained that angels sanctify by the fact that they are innately holy, but humans sanctify by holiness, that is, by taking holy actions, not by their innately fallen nature. To sanctify the self, the environment, and time itself is the ultimate goal of the alchemist, and the process of sanctification is what is known in alchemy as the great work. It is the work of tuning ourselves as an instrument in order to be able to handle more refined and pure energies. It is the work in developing our will and to make it strong enough to allow the one infinite to guide it. The archetypes of the body outline this process of the further refinement of our consciousness. Progressing through the mind cycle has allowed us to emerge with a stable platform from which to move ever further into the deep mind. Let's now explore the alchemical process of transmutation expressed within the archetypes of the body. The matrix of the body, sometimes called justice in Tarot, is a state of equilibrium. There is an order and a balance that is naturally maintained. After sickness, the body heals. When a forest is burned, it grows again. Environments change, planets form and die, life ebbs and flows. Within ourselves, when we are in harmony with what is, we see with little distortion. The matrix of the body represents clear seeing, the ability to see things as they are, undistorted, full of the love of the living one. Attachment to our thoughts, ideologies, the people in our lives, our feelings, past, emotions, and the objects in our life, all of these things put us out of harmony. The things that we do take us further away from our being. These things in and of themselves are not harmful. Rather, what is harmful is our attachments to them. Jean-Yves Leloup says we were not created to possess, but to be with. The distortion of possessing is what causes the imbalance. In reality, nothing, not even our bodies, can be owned. All belongs to the one infinite creator. The work of becoming harmonious is the work of balancing the mind. With clarity of mind comes clarity of perception and balanced thinking. This equilibrium, once maintained, allows one to achieve the inner silence necessary to gain the wisdom of higher awareness. The potentiator of the body is called the sage in Tarot. This is the wisdom we acquire through struggle. Progress can only come through the fire of experience. Our journey inwards requires confronting every part of ourselves, the good and the bad. We must weather the storm of catalysts in order to find the true lesson hidden within. The sage understands more than just life lessons, however. The sage understands the role that individual actions play in universal work, that one is a part of a greater whole. Wisdom is gained when one can see the whole and can recognize the cosmic progression of our actions. The sage understands his work and his own function in the universal work, and thus sets about his task with the knowledge that he is a valuable factor in the scheme of things, with a certain indefinite mission to perform. Ra says the matrix of the body may be seen to be a reflection of opposites of the mind, that is, unrestricted motion. The potentiator of the body, then, is that which, being informed, regulates activity. But what informs the sage? Experience gained from the balancing process of the mind. With proper balance comes the ability to regulate activity, that is, having the necessary judgment in place to decide what actions to take in the physical. And it is only through this wisdom that the adept can rule the oscillations of fortune. The catalyst of the body is also called the Wheel of Fortune in Tarot. In the catalyst of the mind, the Empress reveals itself to the conscious magician. In the catalyst of the body, the Wheel of Fortune depicts the process of how a catalyst is attracted to us in the first place. The study of the archetypes of the body can be seen as a study of the etheric. The etheric body is that which exists closest to the physical body. It is non-physical and is responsible for the physical health of the body. It also functions as a quantum biasing field and is involved in determining your learning path in which future you collapse into existence. Changes to the etheric body create corresponding changes in the physical. As above, so below. Ra says this about the etheric body. It is the adoption of the configuration of which you call health by the etheric body in time-space, which is the key to what you call health, not any event which occurs in space-time. In this process, you may see the transdimensional aspect of what you call will, for it is the will, the seeking, the desire of the entity which causes the indigo body to use the novel configuration and to reform the body which exists in space-time. We can infer from this statement that the makeup of the etheric body determines the physical body's health, and that it is the will of the individual which also informs how the etheric body configures itself. For the Gnostics, the etheric body is tied to the concept of a demiurge. The demiurge can be seen as the soul of the universe. That is, it is the part of the universe which shapes reality. In us, our soul acts in a similar fashion, coupling to the physical body and biasing the probabilities we attract into our lives. The purpose of any demiurge or soul is to physically manifest archetypal ideas thought of by the Logos. The demiurge is the architect of the physical universe, and it was designed to take its instructions from the Logos and implement them into physical reality. Likewise in us, our own demiurge, the soul, takes instructions created by our own individual Logos, the higher self, to manifest the learning lessons we experience in life. The plans laid out by your higher self are carried forth by your soul, influencing the lessons that you attract to yourself in order to gain the wisdom you seek in this lifetime. Consider a tree with various branches jutting off from individual nodal points. The nodal points where the branches spring forth are the choice points in our life, which affects how the tree as a whole grows. All of us have potential futures which we can bring into existence. We constantly reside at the nexus point between many different paths at all times. What reality you most closely resonate with allows its influence to seep into your present and thus influence the direction your life takes. In the channelings of the Cassiopeans, a concept called frequency resonance vibration, or FRV for short, was introduced. FRV can be described as the measure of your degree of spiritual harmonization or resonance with either the creator or the opposite pole of creation, matter itself. Your FRV determines which reality you attract. Those with lower FRV attract harsher catalysts and exist closer to matter. they are more beholden to the law of the jungle. Individuals with lower FRV typically are very reactive and let their emotions get the best of them. They are very much imbalanced, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Those with higher FRV resonate more with the divine and thus are not as beholden to the law of the jungle. They are balanced, pure, less reactive, positive in their outlook, and wise. To those with higher FRV, more synchronistic events happen in their lives which seemingly defy normal logic. Their life resonates with a timeline most closely aligned with the divine. However, no one is immune to the winds of catalyst. As this archetype shows, time is always fructifying events and ever ready to strike to the right or left as the wheel turns under its impulsion, raising the humble and lowering the proud. The purpose of catalyst is to lead the fallen out of their fallen state, or as Philip K. Dick says, the purpose of suffering is to lead out of suffering. The closer we get to true balance, the less harsh our learning lessons need to be in order to awaken us. This is, of course, dependent not only on your FRV, but what you have chosen for your life. Some positive souls choose very harsh catalysts, as the lessons contained within can open up possibilities for them that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. Recall that in the Hierophant, the significator of the mind, the sphinxes are situated on opposite sides. The darker one is on the right of the chariot, and the lighter is on the left, indicating that those experiences, which may be determined as negative, nevertheless can be seen as positive in the grand scheme of things. Tom Montauk of Montauk.net states it this way: spiritual growth is the never-ending expansion of one's realm to encompass deeper and wider aspects of the hologram, to increase the vibrancy and strength of one's being. This involves enriching and expanding one's vibratory spectrum and raising the intensity of illumination. The richer the spectrum, the closer it moves toward white light containing all colors, meaning the closer consciousness arrives to unifying with the hologram and the source that recorded it. When we are in need of a lesson, our vibratory spectrum is lacking certain frequencies. The aura is devoid of a particular pattern. If our vibratory spectrum is missing a component, there is nothing within us to repel through dissonance the corresponding component in the hologram, and so we essentially allow into manifestation that which we most need to experience. Stated another way, at equilibrium, our realm boundary contains missing areas into which fit corresponding probable futures. These probable futures contain significant experiences whose emotional component is sufficient to fuel the expansion of our realm boundary and fill the gap. Once a lesson is learned, the new equilibrium state no longer invites those types of experiences because the gap is filled, but failing to learn a lesson leaves the gap a bit wider than before. This is why failing to learn a lesson the first time causes it to repeat in various forms of escalating severity. Recall that the experience of the mind, the Emperor, is an active force that uses catalysts to help sharpen a polarity. The experience of the body, or the Enchantress, symbolizes the ability of our spiritual nature to subdue the violent forces of nature, including our animal selves. Life is enchanting. Catalyst grabs hold of our attention and doesn't let go until we properly process it. For most, life is chaotic and random. The ebbs and flows of catalysts come and go without much thought. We become easily enchanted by the experience of the body, mesmerized and taken in by the physical world and all of its illusions. In Hermetic tradition, the Enchantress represents a force that is sanctified. It is only through holy action that humans sanctify, meaning it is through the process of deliberate alignment with the divine that allows one to sanctify their internal environment and external environment. In other words, what we align ourselves with determines the degree to which we can sanctify that force. Do you align with the higher or the lower? The force referred to by the Hermeticists is intelligent energy, that vital, mysterious force that comes through us. But what is intelligent energy? Ra says, there is unity, This unity is all that there is. This unity has a potential and kinetic. The potential is intelligent infinity. Tapping this potential will yield work. This work has been called by us intelligent energy. The nature of this work is dependent upon the particular distortions of free will, which in turn is the nature of a particular intelligent energy or kinetic focus of the potential of unity, or that which is all. Intelligent energy is etheric energy. It is the energy provided directly by the Logos. It is the energy that animates living things. Ra says, there is one energy. It may be understood as love light or light love or intelligent energy. Without intelligent energy, we would be overcome by entropy. There would be no life. This energy moves through us, and our energy centers determine how we express this intelligent energy. Consciousness is the prism by which intelligent energy is directed out into the world. When the adept overcomes the illusion of the Enchantress, they've refined their awareness to the point of being able to handle more higher voltage currents, greater refinements of intelligent energy. Their consciousness can refract more pure reflections of this light outward into the world. This is what is meant by sanctifying the force, filtering intelligent energy through the clear prism of the divine. On the Enchantress card, we can see seeds. Some are germinating and some remain closed. These seeds are innate within us, but seeds need fertile soil in order to germinate. The clearing of blockages and the balancing of the mind is doing just that, creating fertile soil. This is represented by the plants appearing underneath the Enchantress's feet. The one infinite cannot take root in our minds if we do not have the finest soil. To make fertile soil is the balancing of catalysts in order to clear the way for the heart. It is a long labor of clearing away the rocks and the thorns. The seeds eventually germinate and grow into fruit. The fruit is the result of the great work spoken about by the Alchemist. Let's take a moment to define work in the spiritual context. Without polarity, electricity could not exist. Likewise with us, if we have no polarity, there is no action or experience. There is no work. Ra says the purpose of polarity is to develop the potential to do work. The potential is illustrated in the Enchantress card by the germinated and closed seeds. The seeds contain the potential. Likewise, we contain potential. This potential is tapped as we progress and the great work is begun. The significator of the body is called the Hangman in Tarot. Recall that all the significators are unified concepts. They are a summary of the cycle. For the body, this summary can be called sacrifice, but it is not martyrdom. It is sacrificing the aims of the lower for the aims of the higher. In the experience of the body, the soil of the mind has been tilled so as to make it fertile. In the significator of the body, the seeds of awareness blossom within this fertile soil and bear fruit. Sacrificing your lower is an inevitable result of this process. Likewise, for the negative path, embracing the lower results in the sacrifice of the higher. Ra says there is no experience which is not purchased by effort of some kind, no act of service of self or others which does not bear a price to the entity manifesting, commensurate with its purity. The sacrifice from an STO perspective relates to the individual tuning process, that is, the individual will giving way for the divine will, to allow the divine to guide your will. Let's examine what the word fruit means in the spiritual context. Recall that in the potentiator of the mind, the high priestess wears fruit on her right shoulder. According to Ra, there is great protection given by the very character of potentiation. To bear fruit is a protected activity. The act of potentiation, that is, making yourself balanced enough to be in potential, creates fertile soil that allows seeds to germinate and grow into fruit. You cannot be in potential if you are not balanced enough to choose a polarity. if you are stuck in the lower cycles of random catalysts, never learning and never growing. If you are, in other words, asleep, you are not in potential. Yeshua in the Gospel of Thomas says, "Grapes are not picked from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, for they do not give fruit. The good offer goodness from the secret of their heart. The perverse offer perversity from the secret of their heart. That which is expressed is what overflows from the heart." The expression of what is in our heart is the fruit. More specifically, it is the outward expression of what you choose to align yourself with. Those who align with the lower express the lower in all they do. Those who align with the higher express the higher in all they do. Humans influence time in this way. The fruit of our work determines how we move through time, either in a positive direction or a negative direction. Thus, the great work of alchemy concludes with the transformation of time. The positive adept's interior transformation allows them to become pure channels for spirit. This is what is meant by the term tuned instrument. Thus, the fruits which blossom around the hangman are the fruit of the spirit. Underneath the hangman is a depiction of beautiful, ornate flowers. These are not your typical wildflowers. These appear to be more delicate flowers, requiring even more fertile soil than is depicted in the experience of the body. The tuned instrument, then, is using the fruit created by experience to create the most fertile soil for the living one to blossom. This sacrifice of the individual will leads to the full interior transformation of the individual. The transformation of the body is called death in Tarot, but death in this case is not a negative thing. It is not the end of life. Death in the case of the transformation of the body refers to the end of cycles. It represents the end of death. The skeleton figure in the card walks on very fertile land, harvesting the heads of various figures. These figures look to be the heads of the hands of kings, emperors, and royalty. The people in those positions tend to have very strong personalities, completely separate from any notion of the divine. Those figures represent the lower, separate self of the adept. To use a more modern term, they represent the separate ego lost in illusion. Jacob Boehme says, "There is no other path to God than a new mind of the soul." The transformation of the body can be seen as the death of the will, or more specifically, the transformation of a will influenced by the lower into a will influenced by the higher. The goal of all positive esoteric training is ultimately to align the will of the adept with the will of the divine, to allow the living one to move through you and to guide your will. This requires a high level of tuning, like a very fine and delicate instrument. Finally, we come upon the great way of the body, or the alchemist in Tarot. Recall that an alchemist is one who is studying how to sanctify their interior and exterior environment, and time itself. They focus on the transmutation of substances. This transmutation is made possible by etheric energy. Alchemical achievements are the results of gathering, concentrating, and multiplying etheric energy so that normal physical laws are overridden. The process of the body cycle culminates in the adept being able to use the body, as Ra says, as the athanor through which the alchemist manifests gold. In other words, the body cycle culminates in the adept being refined enough to be able to direct intelligent or etheric energy and thus transform their interior and exterior environments. This energy comes from the Logos, represented by the eight-rayed sun behind the alchemist. According to the 17th century alchemist Basil Valentine, the eight-rayed star is symbolic of the philosophic Mercury in the completion of the first stage of the great work. In alchemy, Mercury is considered the etheric component of all matter and represents the dynamic, vital, transmutive, vivifying energy present within the substance. the animating soul of matter. While salt denotes the physical component, the seat, the base, matrix, anchor, or the arc of the non-physical aspects, and sulfur denotes the archetypal identity, or the pure vibrational essence, analogous to the human astral body and spirit because it contains the idea unique to that substance. The Alchemist card depicts the completion of the great work. It is the full transformation of the adept. Notice the sun behind the alchemist's head and how it is similar to the rays that are typically depicted as coming out of enlightened masters. These rays are not being generated by the enlightened masters. They're not coming from them, but rather coming through them. The alchemist is transmuting intelligent energy into its highest expression. The alchemist isn't making gold through their body. The alchemist's body has become the philosopher's stone. The lower will has given way to the will of the living one, and the living one's presence has transformed the inner environment of the adept, and through the adept transforms the outer environment, and thus transforms time. The alchemist represents the transformations that occur with the great work.